Oh, sound. People ask me all the time what I do as a radio producer. It's one of those jobs that you hear exists, but people don't really know what it is. And what it's really about is getting ideas onto the airwaves. Something that really is what word of mouth is all about. We desire to present listener-driven radio, which is giving you what you want, which you may have heard if you've heard fund drives at NHPR. We're here to give you what you want. The thing about our show that's interesting is we want to give you something you've never heard before, but we have to do it in a very specific time frame. Our show runs for an hour, but minus breaks and so forth, it's actually more like 40 minutes. And so segments are between 6 and 12 minutes long, but each segment takes as much preparation as a full-hour show. It involves finding an idea, and what we're going to do in this show is trace an idea from its very beginnings to its meanderings onto the air. And we decided to use as our guinea pig Jan-Erik Asplund, our favorite intern maybe that we've ever had. And for any interns that are watching, I apologize. Jan found an idea in a newspaper article about wet houses for alcoholics. Imagine Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, where everybody got to drink until they died. That's basically what these things are. And we thought, perfect. It's something you've never heard before. Jan then scoured the article looking for a potential guest. It's harder than you might think. A lot of the interviewees for these articles are nerds. They're doctors, they're professors, but then it's time for him to sort of decide to pitch the idea to us. And it sounds like this.
Where did you find the idea?
I found it online. Someone sent me this link to St. Paul Pioneer Press, and it's an article about the St. Anthony's residence, which is this hospice where chronic alcohol.
And then we have to ask for the second part of the pitch.
So we should probably try to call them, leave a message or something.
Yeah.
Seems obvious, right? Now, what's really funny is following Jan around sort of dissected the process and made me realize how much more complicated it is than we think. You send somebody an email, you put it in the board in black, which means we're doing it on that day, but we don't yet know who's going to do it. The ones you see in blue in the corner mean that it's booked and we actually have a guest. Now it's time for Jan to send the email to the guy that we think we want to talk on the show, and it's something that he hadn't done before, so I asked him to record it for us.
We're interested in developing a segment on St. Anthony's residence in St. Paul. We were wondering if you'd like to be interviewed. If you're interested in being on the show, please give me a call back or send me an email at this address.
Now we were in luck.
Jan-Erik.
The guy that Jan-Erik was emailing happened to be an NPR addict. So of course, right away, he's like, I'll totally be on your show. Oh, by the way, there's also a colleague of mine who knows a little bit more about this. But one of the things we always try to do to make a good radio show is listen to other interviews that our potential guests have given. And sometimes what we hear doesn't necessarily make us want to put them on the show, which unfortunately is what happened with this guy. Yeah, crickets. So, luckily he had given us a backup guest who we then called. Now, the backup guest agreed to do the pre-interview, agreed to be booked, but told us, I'm a little nervous about being on the radio. One thing you learn as a radio producer is when someone tells you they're not going to be good on the radio, they're probably not going to be good on the radio. Luckily, as Sad Keanu was illustrating for us, he never called us back, so we weren't able to get the pre-interview to begin with. So we sort of avoided having to tell the second guy, okay, you're not going to be on the radio. But then inspiration struck. I asked Jan, how about the reporter who wrote the original article? Seems obvious. However, sometimes it's not obvious because sometimes reporters make really bad guests, but sometimes they make great guests. In this case, this guy had written a 3-part series about this particular wet house where alcoholics go to drink until they die. He had interviewed all the people involved. He had basically done our research for us, and thank goodness, total self-promoter, which is the person you want on the radio. Because the self-promoter is going to be able to sort of talk about what's interesting about what they did, the story they wanted to tell. He works for a small Midwestern paper, and there's a good chance he might want a better job someday, so he's going to use this interview to help him get that better job. So we pre-interviewed him, and he sounded great. Now here's the thing. Now we have to start from scratch, write a whole brand new script for this guy, ask a whole brand new set of questions because he's not the doctor running the program, and it's sort of like the day before we went on, putting it in black all over again because we don't know what's going to happen. Noontime rolls around. We prep Virginia. We finish the script. We choose the music. We write the promo for the segment. And then it's time for the segment to actually happen, and Jan-Erik is crossing his fingers that it sounds good. And here it comes.
Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Virginia.
Who is it that ends up at the St. Anthony residence?
the very worst of the worst. These are people.
Fabulous guest. And the moral of the story is if you want to put an idea on the air, get a great intern. My name is Rebecca Lavoie.